When you think about all three specs of Rogue, every single spec goes through humongous changes that trying to get this down to my top 10 is borderline impossible, because even just some of the minor changes like evasion now being on a 2-minute cooldown and it increases your dodge by 100%, instead of the 50% that it does on a 3-minute cooldown in Cataclysm, from talents being able to get a 30% damage reduction when you use Feint, Shiv now giving an extra effect depending on what poison you've got on, with Crippling Poison it's going to reduce the target's movement speed by 70% for 12 seconds, or with Mind Numbing Poison increasing the casting time of their next spell cast within 8 seconds by 100%. Even what you'll notice with the removal of Instant Poison, so now you've just got Deadly Poison and Wound Poison as your lethal poisons, and we're definitely going to be talking more about poisons shortly. Sub-Rogue just being simplified in many ways, but still being an absolute pumper on single target. For an example of how it's been simplified, Energetic Recovery, giving you 8 energy every 2 seconds while Slice and Dice is up, so you've no longer got that really annoying job of keeping Recuperate up to get energy back. Even though it's slightly less energy that you're getting back, it's one less finishing move that you need to worry about. Honor Amongst Thieves no longer giving 5% crit, and it doesn't work outside of combat now, so you don't need to keep begging your healers to heal you before a pull because you're not going to get any combo points from it anyway. Or even Assassination Rogue getting an Execute ability. Yes, at the moment you'll be using Backstab at less than 35% energy to be able to get energy back, so you can kind of class that as an Execute ability, but now as Assassination your Sinister Strike is actually replaced with Dispatch, which you'll use when the boss is under 35% health. The brilliant thing about this is you're going to have a passive called Blindside, which you get a 30% chance when you use Mutilate to actually allow you to use Dispatch for free and irrespective of what the target's health is. This just makes a very simple assassination spec feel a lot more dynamic and just fun to play. Or even for combat, if you love the spec but hate losing Bandit's Guile's insight stacks when you finally get it into the red and the boss dies or you have to switch to ads, that really sucks. Well, in Mr. Pandaria, that's not even an issue anymore because it's not attached to the target, it will change to the new target with you without having to use redirect. That's on a hefty 1-minute cooldown in Cataclysm, which also we're going to talk about that because that's not the case anymore. So even just based off of this very short introduction to the Rogue, you can see the sheer amount of changes there are. So while I'm trying to do top 10, I've probably just gave you 6 or 7 just there. But don't worry, there is 10 more. So number 1 would be the addition of Shadow Blades. All 3 specs get this cooldown and it lines up with other cooldowns with some specs better than others. But on a 3-minute cooldown, you draw upon the surrounding shadows to empower your weapons, causing your auto attacks to deal pure shadow damage. And also your combo point generating abilities generate an additional combo point when used. So not only are you going to ignore all of the boss's armor because you're now doing magic damage or shadow damage to be specific, you're also doubling your combo point generation for 12 seconds. Now this is an absolutely amazing cooldown, and pairing it with something like Adrenaline Rush for combat where it increases your energy regen, so you're actually going to be getting more combo points naturally, and while Adrenaline Rush is up as well, or your main abilities have their GCD reduced, it just makes Shadow Blades feel absolutely amazing. It's amazing for all 3 specs, but as I say, it does line up perfectly with Adrenaline Rush's combat, and obviously just getting so many more combo points to be able to do more Eviscerates or even Envenoms as Assassination just feels amazing. Coming in at number 2 would have to be Shroud of Concealment. It's on a 5-minute cooldown and there's not a lot more to say other than the fact that it is a mass stealth. So all targets within 20 yards will be concealed from sight for up to 15 seconds. Now this is a great way in challenge modes to be able to save on using invisibility potions because this lasts exactly the same amount of time as a lesser invisibility potion anyway. Of course it's super strong in PvP as well to have the element of surprise when 4 or 5 of you are all popping up next to Blacksmith, but in general, it's just a great ability, and eventually when Mythic Plus becomes a thing, it is a staple utility tool in the Rogue's arsenal that literally gets assigned to specific points in M+ dungeons, which will be the same as gold challenge modes. Number 3 is just AoE in general. Up until this point, AoE is pretty lackluster. Well, the good news now is Fan of Knives generates combo points, so you're no longer punished for using Fan of Knives because you're still going to be able to generate combo points to use your single target finishers on. But not only this, you also get an AoE finisher called Crimson Tempest. The more combo points you've got, the more physical damage it does, but it also causes the target to bleed for an additional 264% of the initial damage. Now this synergizes really well with different specs passives, so an example would be Sanguinary Veins for sub. So what this passive does is increases the damage of your Rupture ability by 50% and causes you to deal 35% additional damage to targets afflicted by Rupture, Garrot, or Crimson Tempest. So keeping a bleed on the target at all times so you gain this additional damage is obviously a top priority in terms of your priority list when it comes to dealing damage. So the fact that you can do AoE and then do Crimson Tempest on AoE, which will apply to the boss as well, means you're not sacrificing your single target damage too much to actually help out and do some AoE. I've got to be honest with you, Fan of Knives generating a combo point is actually enough to get excited about. Crimson Tempest is just the cherry on the top. Next up would have to be the redesign of Smoke Bomb. Now, Smoke Bomb's on a 3-minute cooldown, and it puts a cloud around you like it ordinarily does, but it now causes everybody stood in it to take 20% less damage. One of the things about rogues is you take them to a raid to do as much damage as possible, but that's really it. They've never really had that great raid utility outside of things like Tricks of the Trade, which again you can live without, that makes you go, we really want a rogue in this group. As we work our way through this top 10, you'll realise that there are so many reasons to take a rogue. Yes, as a sub-rogue, you're pretty much one of the highest single target melee DPS you can bring to a raid, but you also now bring really good raid cooldowns like this, and also what makes it into the 5th top change, which is buffs. Whilst Honor Amongst Thieves no longer brings crit, all 3 specs of rogues bring very important buffs to the raid. That's 10% attack speed from Swiftblade's Cunning, Smoke Bomb as a really solid damage reduction cooldown for your raid, a really important debuff being the 5% spell damage taken, because there's only 2 classes that can bring it outside of a Hunter's Pet, and that's a Rogue, which is all 3 rogue specs, and Warlocks. 12% armor reduction, which whilst you don't want your rogue doing expose armor actually changes in a pretty solid way, and really in a way that makes it one of the strongest armor reduction debuffs. Because expose armor is no longer a finisher, instead it's now a builder. So it costs 25 energy and it applies 1 stack, and it stacks up to 3 times, so it's 4% per stack. Now the good thing is it still generates combo points, so you're not losing combo points to put it up, you're now gaining combo points to put it up, but of course it's coming at an energy loss, which would be a DPS loss. However, with a glyph called Glyph of Sharpened Knives, your Fan of Knives also damages the armor of its victims, applying 1 application of weakened armor effect to each target. You literally have an AoE expose armor, a few Fan of Knives, and you've got the armor reduction on absolutely everyone around you, which goes without saying is super strong. What you're probably thinking though is there's got to be a catch, and it's got to be a DPS loss to use that glyph over another glyph. Well, the glyphs change in such a way that none of them really give massive amounts of damage, if any at all, because for each spec like Hemorrhaging Veins for sub-rogue, you'll only really find 1 or 2 glyphs max that's going to give you any DPS gain at all. So really, outside of 1 or 2, most of the glyphs you will use for utility, like being able to AoE Sunder, for absolutely no negative, because you're going to be Fan of Knives in on AoE anyway, so you might as well be AoEing and reducing their armor so your subsequent AoEs do more damage. Of course, you're still only one of 3 classes that can remove Enrage effects as well with Shiv, and you bring a 25% mortal wounds effect if you need it on a specific fight by using Wound Poison. So like you can see, for a rogue in MoP, you bring so much more than just big damage. Number 6 has just got to be a few honourable mentions when it comes to talents. When it comes to talents, you get some amazing options, one of which is Anticipation, which is absolutely fantastic. This basically allows you to store up to a maximum of 5 extra combo points. So for every single rogue spec, you can essentially have 10 combo points. It won't show under your character that you've got 10, but you'll have 5, and then you can accumulate 5 stacks of Anticipation, and then you'll consume the stacks of Anticipation rather than your combo points. This is almost a must-have for every single rogue, and really makes all 3 specs feel fantastic to play. Subterfuge is another amazing talent, mainly for sub, but it's great for PvP as well, because your stealth breaks 3 seconds after dealing or receiving hostile actions, rather than doing so immediately. This basically means in a PvP situation, you can get out a cheap shot and an ambush on someone before you even break stealth, or most importantly, extending that Find Weakness time. So you still have Find Weakness, where your ambush, garrote, and cheap shot abilities reveal a flaw in the target's defense, causing all attacks to bypass all of their armor. So now not only are you getting your first ambush out to actually apply Find Weakness, your second ambush, while you're still technically stealthed, is going to benefit from that effect. I absolutely love Subterfuge, and the only time I'm not running Subterfuge is when I'm running Night Stalker, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But honestly, when it comes to talents, you get so many cool options, and I would say if you're a PvP rogue, you're absolutely going to love them. Next up might seem like a boring one, but it's not actually in Mist of Pandaria where the combo points are on you. The combo points in MoP are still on the target. So when you switch target, you lose your combo points. And as a rogue or a feral druid, this can be particularly irritating. Now, yes, in Cataclysm you have redirect, but it's on a hefty 1 minute cooldown. Well, an amazing glyph will get added in the pre-patch called Glyph of Redirect, funny enough. This now reduces the cooldown down to 10 seconds, which quite honestly makes this glyph absolutely mandatory on any fight where you need to switch targets to adds. And even just in the open world when you're questing, when you're on your way from level 85 to 90, every rogue should be running this glyph because it is just that good. Being able to literally switch any excess combo points off of targets onto the new one before you start, and it's ready all the time, 10 seconds. It would be very rare that you need to swap your combo points off more often than every 10 seconds. Now, even though it's not technically a class change and it's just a glyph addition, it had to make the top 10 just because of how impactful this one glyph is. Number 8 has got to be one of the most fundamental systems when it comes to a rogue. From all the way back in vanilla when you got to level 20 and could do your poison quest, poisons are something that have remained a constant throughout the rogue's evolution. Well, now they've evolved one step further. No longer do you need to keep poisons in your bag, nor do you buy them from a vendor. Now it's actually classed as a spell where you get a nice pop-out menu like this, and you've got 4 choices of poisons. You've got deadly poison, wound poison, crippling poison, and mind-numbing poison. They all do what you would expect them to do, where deadly poison stacks 5 times, and once it's stacked 5 times, it then begins to act as instant poison. Wound poison does instant damage and reduces healing received. Crippling poison is your slow, and mind numbing increases casting speed. Now, you can always use 1 lethal, which your lethal's deadly and wound, and 1 non-lethal, which is crippling and mind numbing. You can use 1 of each. And then they just act as a 1-hour buff, where each strike has a chance of causing the target to suffer nature damage, or each strike has a chance of poisoning the enemy, slowing their movement speed. It's not relevant now which weapons attack him, whether it's main hand or offhand, it's just each strike in general. I think this is an amazing quality of life addition and probably a welcome change by every rogue. Number 9 is going to be survivability, and I mentioned in the intro to the video where evasion is now only on a 2-minute cooldown and increases your dodge chance by 100%. But now every rogue gets so much more in terms of staying alive on bosses that it's kind of crazy. Like all 3 specs now having access to cheat death. So where this was just a sub-only ability and would be used on fights to be able to cheese mechanics, now every spec of rogue can use cheat death to cheese mechanics. In the same row of talents, you can now just get 30% damage reduction to all sources when you use Feint for 5 seconds, or a really cool poison, which is classed as a non-lethal poison, so you can use this alongside, let's say, wound poison, and it is just a flat-out leech effect. Once you've got the enemy poisoned, each time you attack the target that's poisoned, you're going to heal for 10% of the damage dealt, and then if you shiv when you've got this up, it instantly restores 5% of your health. Even Cloak of Shadows gets buffed, where we all know how powerful Cloak of Shadows is, but it's now only on a 1-minute cooldown. Which, let's not forget, you can still glyph it to get 40% less physical damage while it's active as well, which just makes rogue survival absolutely crazy. And while Combat Readiness and Cloak of Shadows share a cooldown in Cataclysm, that's no longer the case in Mist of Pandaria either, because obviously Combat Readiness comes from a talent, so it would suck that if you chose that talent it shared a cooldown with something. So rogues just shouldn't die. And the last one I want to throw in, I even mentioned in the rogue talent video because I just think it's so broken. If you choose the correct talents, you can actually stealth around at epic ground mount speed. And that's using Night Stalker, so you get a 20% additional movement speed while stealthed, and Burst of Speed, which you can keep up 100% of the time. Now, being able to stealth round at epic ground mount speed while pickpocketing before the raids open to try and get the epic dagger or epic sword, or preferably both, just feels insane. In the open world, running around with Night Stalker on and Burst of Speed is my go-to. I would never ever be out in the open world without these two, even if it was for world PvP. Because just being able to stealth around quicker than people can ride around is one of the best things about Rogue, in my opinion. And you've seen a lot of good things about Rogue in this video. But if you don't know already, like I said, if you're pickpocketing the Vine junk boxes that you can get, there's a chance at getting a 476 epic sword and a 476 epic dagger, which not only will you be able to use as pre-raid bis, but you'll also be able to sell these on the auction house as well, and not feeling like you're crawling around in stealth while you're out pickpocketing. It's just great. But that's my top 10 list. Now, I appreciate that I said it was a top 10 rogue changes and there was about 17 rogue changes in there, but I must admit, I wanted to be as thorough as possible, but I think top 10 just sounds better, don't it, than top 17. So as always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. Consider joining the channel as a member, but definitely make sure you hit subscribe because there's plenty of more class change videos coming, as well as raid guides, gold challenge mode guides, like absolutely everything. Let's have a big push to 100k, because when we get to 100k, I'm going to do a giveaway for 2 of the big MoP Deluxe editions. So just to celebrate, because it's been a long time coming, what, 5 years to get to 100k? It has took a while, but thanks to you guys, we are nearly there. So thank you as always, and I'll see you on the next one.